now, and Complex has put Dun Bradstreet in a position to be ready for the future and help small businesses be ready for the future. But we're really excited about the relationship. We're really excited about the product, and we're looking forward to many opportunities helping a number of businesses, both small, medium, and large, be prepared for what is here.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. I appreciate the comments about Complex. We're proud of our analytics capability and our ability to use that to help simplify customers' problems. When we were looking to partner on this, we naturally looked at Dun Bradstreet, one of the, if not the premier corporate data company. And of course, anybody in the defense industrial base is already doing business with Dun Bradstreet if they have a DUNS number. And so that is a pretty significant brand impact, and based on our ability to work well together with D&B, it was a natural marriage of the two companies to provide this capability to the defense industrial base together.
That's great. Okay, and thank you both for that. And before we get started, what we wanted to do is we have a few poll questions. We'd like to put those up in front of everybody. Just get a sense of the audience, who we have joining us today and everything. So if you guys will take a couple seconds and give us some insights, that would be great. And then we'll get started here in about 10 seconds. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna leave that poll up there. So again, please keep giving us these answers, but it's what we use to kind of tailor the content and make sure that what we're gonna be discussing today is really speaking to the audience and everything. And the one thing I do want to mention is, Michelle mentioned it, there is that Q&A pod there at the bottom. Please use this. You've got Bill and you've got Chip, and normally we have so many questions, we can't get to them all, so get your questions in early and often. But let's go ahead and get started on this. So Bill, last year CMMC started and we're kind of, rolling things out. Near the end of the year, we had really a couple big things happen. We had the interim rule go final, and then right near the end of the year, we had, this indication that there's these probably 7 Pathfinder contracts that are coming out imminently and everything. What is that signaling to the market? What do people need to take away from those things happening? Because I know earlier it was, is it going to happen? Is it not? And the interim rule kind of solved that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, I think you really touched on it. The answer is CMMC that got talked about a lot last year and raised a lot of questions. Essentially, it's moving forward as OSD indicated it would. So the interim rule has become final. They are pushing forward with the initial, what they're calling the Pathfinder RFPs. Even though there was some pushback in certain sectors and some concern because of uncertainty, the message from OSD has been consistent. This is coming. This is how they're going to do it. And in fact, they're proceeding according to the plan. So I think it behooves everyone in the defense industrial base to get on board the train. It is leaving the station. And it is going to be required. And what we're hoping to do in conjunction with Dun & Bradstreet is make that initial and subsequent CMMC certifications easier, more predictable, reduce the risk involved for you by doing that pre-assessment to know where you stand. And I can say after interacting directly with several customers that many of them were surprised at what they didn't know about some of the details of the questions that they must respond to, and it just validated the value of doing the pre-assessment and understanding and being prepared before they actually enter their audit.
Oh, that's great. So Chip, we got our first question here already. So thanks for that. Les is asking, what's a Pathfinder RFP?
Oh, that's a great question. So when this program was first conceived, the Department of Defense knew that they couldn't immediately, include the CMMC requirement in every contract that goes out right away, and that they were going to have to gradually build into this test the waters, as it were. And so what they decided to do was they identified a number, 15 initially, Pathfinder contracts that would include the CMMC requirement. And the contracts will be of various and sundry size. Right now, it looks like that number has actually been reduced to an initial 7, but that is obviously subject to change. But those are the contracts that will go out with an invitation to bid or RFP, and the requirement will be that you be CMMC certified either at the prime or the subcontractor level, and in order to be qualified to either bid or be part of a team that's bidding.
That's great. And Chip, you just mentioned sub, and one of the questions we get asked all the time is who needs to get certified and when do they need to get certified? And typically that question is coming from somebody who is a subcontractor to somebody. And, all right, so let's get difficult. What if I'm a sub to a sub to a sub or whatever, what I'm 4 tiers down or 4 layers down? Do I still need to get certified?
Absolutely, Brian. And here's the thing, and I really like the way that you couched it. What if I'm a sub to a sub to a sub? Well, the whole purpose of the program is to ensure that the entire supply chain is covered, that the entire supply chain is compliant. Well, how do you do that? You ensure that all of not only the prime contractors, but there are many subcontractors and the end providers are actually compliant as well. So the first part of the answer is yes. All of those need to be certified. How soon do you do it? Our recommendation is really simple. The earlier you do it, the more procurement ready you are right away. And there's a couple of things that you always have to keep in mind, especially if you're a small business. You've really got a few things that are just completely out of your control. When RFPs will be released, whether or not you'll be selected, all those things. But the one thing that you do have in your control and you don't have enough of is time. So the earlier that you get yourself compliant, the earlier that you're ready to be procurement ready, as I like to call it, then the better you are. And you're also more attractive to the prime contractors that are looking for teammates that are compliant. Because again, if you come to the table and say, no, I'm not compliant, but I plan to get there, that makes you a lot less, attractive to a large prime contractor, because they've got to be ready to go, because they're programming things in early and they're going after them now and they're being prepared now. So our recommendation has always been the earlier the better.
Great. And so that's great. So now we're talking about subs and Bill, I think the other thing that comes up is, well, I'm a certain type of company. Do I have to get certified? And we have a question here about where do medical simulation companies fall into this with CMMC? So the full question is, these medical simulators are utilized within the training and education departments. Most do not use cloud or DoD networks and do not contain sensitive information because they do not capture patient data. What would be your advice to this person?
Yeah, so the litmus test essentially for whether you're going to need to be CMMC certified is whether you handle controlled unclassified information, CUI. And that can be surprising sometimes as to which types of companies are required to handle that. The definitive answer is going to be to look at the RFP that you're responding to and talk to the KO that's assigned to that and ask them quite specifically if it handles CUI. For instance, if your company, in this case, it's a medical simulation company, if there's any data on, how many, service members are you treating in what locations, right? Remember, very surprisingly, there was an issue about, a little more than a year ago with Fitbits, right? COTS thing, very commercial, except guess what? They kept seeing these Fitbit location indicators in all these little places that were sensitive military locations, because lots of military people like to stay fit and were wearing these things. So the litmus test is whether your company at any stage in the contract process handles controlled and classified information, and whether your contract has designated CMMC requirements. That's really what you should look at. And And if you have questions, then you need to talk to the KO on that contract for the definitive answer.
Great, thanks, Bill. Chip, so Howard kind of asked a follow-up question to what we were just talking about with the sub. So who's responsible for getting the sub suppliers, the mom and pops, to start the process for CMMC? Maybe there's some limited resources to cover the organization, and the training and certifying the smaller suppliers maybe they don't have the resources of the larger primes that are serving or that they're serving.
Now, Howard actually brings up, one of the great dilemmas, but at the end of the day, the prime contractor is responsible for their subcontractors in ensuring that they are CMMC certified when they submit their bid. And obviously when award is made, then that's going to be verified. And one of the things that our team at QOMPLX has been able to put together is a really good program that can be quickly and widely dispersed amongst subcontractors. So if you're a large prime or a medium prime putting together a team, you can work with your subs with this tool to ensure that they are preparing to be ready. So again, you're not caught in this last minute thing where you're having to rush to get somebody certified, or you're having to change out teammates and perhaps go with a teammate that you've got less reliability on because they aren't CMMC certified. And again, Howard, absolutely right. The biggest problem is resourcing. Again, in my opinion, one of the biggest resources that you don't have enough of is time. And so if you've got the ability to not only put a process in place, but move that process at pretty good speed, which is what the QOMPLX tool is able to help you do. I think that's a real value add and something that will keep you competitive in what is going to be what we all recognize as being a hyper competitive year in 2021 as we work to bring the economy back.
That's really good, Chip. Yeah, I think, basically it sounds like the whole chain of, companies supplying that contract have to be certified. And I think that's great. Bill, so we were talking earlier about the medical equipment, and we had another attendee say, what about professional architects? I will say, this is interesting to me because I know the one story you talk about is the concrete at, for the
my thunder, man. That's my example.
I love it.
Yeah, so I think the question is about, hey, I think they said, hey, we're an engineer, and I'm trying to find that we got flooded with so many questions all of a sudden.
Do professional architects and engineers need to be certified?
Yeah, so it all depends on whether you handle CUI, and surprisingly, as Brian was saying, I've spoken to a couple customers that were in the engineer and construction field, and it turns out that they did. Right. For instance, one of them was laying concrete on some airfields, and the plans that show the location, how thick is the concrete, that tells you things like load-bearing capacity and that sort of thing. Turned out that it was CUI, and that they do require CMMC certification. So if you're an engineer and architect company and you're doing plans for military facilities, my guess is that they probably will designate that CUI. And once again, I fall back to look at your specific RFP that you're responding to, see if they have already designated CUI handling requirements and CMMC requirements. And if you have any question at all, ask your KO on that RFP. But architects and engineers, if you're doing military contract work, since this is a DoD program for right now, my guess is that there's more chance than not that you would find that CUI is involved in your work.
That's great. I'm going to go back and answer. We had a question earlier about the list of the 7 to 15 contracts as pathfinders. Essentially, there's just a lot of news articles out there. So if you do a search on CMMC Pathfinder contracts, you'll see the list of the 7 contracts that are being indicated would come out as those. So we'll go from there. Okay, so next, Bill, keeping it with you, Are RFQs and POs containing only FAR and DFAR clauses, no CUI considered covered defense information?
Well, so I'm not the authoritative source. I want to make sure that you talk to your government contracting officials. Okay, but I think that full question, did that have a question about SPRS involved in it as well?
That one did not. There might be another one.
I'm starting to cross the streams. There's so many that I'm reading.
That's fine.
I think we're going to spend this entire webinar doing Q&A at the speed at which these questions are rolling in. So that question was regarding FAR clauses and whether that would necessarily count as CDI. Would you read that one to me again, please? I think we're up to 16 questions, and I'm
yeah. Give me 1 second. I got to scroll in and find it again. All right. So the original question was: are RFQs or POs containing any FAR/DFAR clauses, no CUI, considered covered defense information?
Yeah. So I would say verify that it doesn't contain CUI. And one of the things you've heard OSD speak to specifically is that if the company is providing a COTS product and it does not involve handling any CUI, then they're not required to get a CMMC certification. But it's surprising the number of innocuous things like a contract for pouring concrete for a taxiway does involve CUI. And so that's why I'm saying verify with your government contracting official whether it does or whether it doesn't. I can't answer that question. You need to get it straight from them. However, if it does involve CUI, then you are going to be required to get CMMC.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Bill, because actually, so Brian's on here, not me, a different one. So it's a great name. I love it. But he said he is an engineering group, and he says that we handle CUI for manhole covers, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
yes. Right. So it's like, so I think that's really the point is, you know, really you have to, the answer is do you handle CUI information? Whether it doesn't necessarily matter what you do or what you cover, it's really answering that question.
That's the point that I'm trying to make. And,
yeah.
and essentially, I'm not here to challenge or defend what the DoD has designated as CUI. I'm just here to pass along the information of when this program applies to you and when it doesn't. And it seems to be that more often than not, it does.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chip, you know, there's a question here, and I know we have a slide here on it, and it says, so Lynn's asking, I hear the term, oh gosh, the questions keep coming in, it keeps moving on. I hear the term certified. What is the certification? As I understand, there are 4 levels, with DoD requiring level 3, and after pre-assessment, a score will be given. So is there an actual certification or just a score? All right, so I'm gonna break this up first. So let's first bring up the slide that walks through the different levels. And talk through that.
5 levels, as you know, Brian, as opposed to
4. There are 5, yes. Okay, so we've got that up. So this shows the 5 different levels. Bill, I know you talked to this and you brought this to us.
Yep. Well, this is a good slide for understanding where the certification comes from, what the requirements were built on. Essentially, it was built largely on NIST 800-171. And then they threw in a couple other things. And then particularly when you get above level 3, level 4, and level 5, but level 3 has some too, there are some things unique to CMMC. The point here is that these questions are not all new. These are things that companies were probably already doing. One of the FAR clauses that companies were already self-attesting to was NIST 800-171 compliance, for instance. So that has changed. And now that you must, for NIST 800-171, you must register in the SPRS system and certify that you're compliant. And KOs will be looking at that before they make contract awards. And also, you must now have a third-party audit for CMMC, which includes many 800-171 questions, but includes others. So the biggest difference there is the fact that you can no longer self-attest, and that you get a third-party auditor who conducts an audit, and you get a go or no-go out of that audit. You're either certified or not certified. And I think that addresses the question that I heard you mention on what does certification means. It means taking and passing your audit from a certified third-party auditor, and those auditors and organizations are accredited by the CMMC AB, the CMMC accrediting body. And so only the list of those organizations can give you a CMMC audit. We are not, neither QOMPLX or Dun Bradstreet, we are not conducting those audits. We're focused on helping you with your pre-assessment, helping you understand the issues, helping you understand what's required to comply with those questions, and getting you ready with confidence, mitigating your risk that when you take your CMMC audit, that you will pass as expected, and it won't impact your ability to win DoD contracts. I think I answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. And Chip, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped in there on you. Anything else to add to that?
No, Brian. Bill really covered it. But one of the things I'd ask that folks consider, this tool really can be part of what I would call your cyber hygiene tools. And because remember, the tool itself is not a one and done. And again, certification is also, certification from the CMMC approved auditors, that may be a one and done, and it may get you to a certain level. But with this tool, for the year that that you subscribe to it, you've got the opportunity to go back in and reassess if you want to move to another level. So you start out at level 1. You're certified at level 1, and but you continue to grow your business. You get the opportunity to now go after opportunities that are level 3. Then you've now got a tool that can immediately tell you how far away you are from being level 3. And levels 4 and 5 take on different connotations because they are much more complex opportunities or requirements. But getting from level 1 to level 3 and having a tool in your kit bag that you have the ability to go in and pulse whenever you want to, I think that's invaluable.
Okay, great. All right. So one of the other questions that we get a lot is, we're talking about do I need to, but who are the approved auditors? Chip, where are we with that?
So again, great question, Brian. So the approved auditors are the ones, Bill mentioned this earlier, the CMMC accrediting board has identified what are referred to as C3PAOs. Those are the companies that are actually approving or training and approving the actual auditors themselves. So they're trained the trainer, so to speak. And so those companies have been identified. There have been more than a few that have been actually certified by the AB, and they've begun the process of certifying the approved auditors. At the end of this month, the CMMC is going to, AB is going to give an update as to where they are in terms of the number of C3PAOs that have actually been approved, as well as the actual number of auditors. And they're going to, and then you'll be able to have a little more fidelity on, who is approved to do the actual auditing. But right now, the auditors of the auditors are approved, and we're quickly moving towards getting the actual auditors themselves out and getting companies prepared or certified.
Okay, great. In the bill, I think it's, really the next thing is, okay, now that I kind of am hearing about CMMC and understanding, if I handle the CUI, I'm going to have to get certified. So when I look at the survey responses, it looks like there's a large portion of our audience today that is looking to get certified in about 6 months timeframe. It sounds like a lot of time, but I know being on these with you guys, yeah, I know being on several of these with you too, that's not a lot of time, because if we know that pre-assessment might uncover some things we need to fix. So let's get to this on when do I use the pre-assessment And, as we're talking through this, a lot of our audience tends to work with consultants on these things. Can I have a pre-assessment and still have the consultant? How do those play together? And let's talk about that.
Yeah. So first of all, particularly after the different customers that I've spoken to directly, I feel like starting to prepare for your CMMC audit, if you believe you're going to need CMMC certification, starting now is a good idea. Just for clarification, since we didn't talk about it yet on this webinar, DoD is going to roll out the CMMC requirements over 5 years. Okay, it started with the DoD's fiscal year 21, which started October 1st of 2020. And so that 5-year process has begun. There were some other questions, earlier about, hey, they were doing the math and, how many would it take? How many would it, how many companies in the 300,000 strong defense industrial base would have to do it every week to get it done in 1 year? Well, that's why DoD is doing it in 5 years. But it is a significant lift. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is to make it easier and faster and more understandable by having this pre-assessment solution that folks can start. And when you hear us referencing the tool and the solution in this, what we're talking about is the software solution that QOMPLX has created in conjunction with Dun Bradstreet to help you understand what the requirements are, and depending on which level you choose. And just for reference, since the question's about our tool, although my engineers like me to use the term solution, okay, so I'll call it a solution. Just in terms of reference, maybe this would be a good time to play that short 60-second video, so all the people asking questions on here will get a sense of what we're referring to very, very briefly. Can we roll that video now?
Are you worried you're not going to pass a CMMC audit and lose out on the chance to win defense contracts? Dun Bradstreet and QOMPLX have partnered to bring you the pre-assessment to help you better prepare for your CMMC third-party audit, no matter what level of compliance you're working towards. Created with the help of former government security auditors and powered by QOMPLX's data analytics platform, we walk you through each control measure, including the piece of the regulation that refers to those controls.
Okay, so essentially there, I guess that's a little shorter than I had remembered, but essentially what we do is, when the customers, sign up for this pre-assessment solution, they get a 1-year license to run it multiple times, and also potentially at multiple levels. Maybe you can throw up that multiple level slide that we talked about. And it takes you through, if you saw on that slide there, you see the 130 practices for level 3, 156 for level 4, etc. So that relates to the number of security control questions that you're going to be asked at the different levels. And as you go through it, it shows you the piece of the regulation about specifically the question that you're being asked and that the auditor is going to ask you when you come in. Then it gives you 1 or 2 examples of, well, actually, then it gives you an explanation in simpler terms what that means. So our security compliance professionals who've been doing this for years and years, not CMMC since that's new, but all the things, all the related government compliance practices, then explain what that means in simpler terms. That's particularly useful if you don't have a large or highly sophisticated IT compliance staff, right? So it's good with working with your current IT staff. And then it gives you an example or 2 of what a good response looks like to that question. What is the auditor going to be looking for? And then it allows you, so you type in your response, you say yes or no, do we meet that? You type in why you think that's true, and then it allows you to attach a document or an artifact that provides the supporting information to justify your answer and to satisfy the questions of the auditor. And then when you're done with all of that, it tracks your completion. And when you're done, it allows you to produce a final report, both as a PDF and as a electronic file that you can share with your auditor. And it, in the order of the questions that are asked, it has your responses, and it has the attachments to justify your response, all organized in a particular format that allows you to hand that to the auditor. I just wanted to take this point, since so many questions are starting to come up as we're referencing the tool and solution. This is the solution that we've developed with Dun Bradstreet to get you ready. That's what the pre-assessment is about. So hopefully that answered a number of the incredibly high number of questions that we're getting. But I know there's some others that I was specifically going to answer beyond that one, Brian, but hopefully that was a good reference for everybody as we move forward on the questions.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, Bill. You know, I think we also have a couple screenshots. So I think one of the things that we're going to get into is and it looks like here, the vast majority, 66% of our audience today is looking to go level 3. One of the things that I know that is brought up is, well, how should I do that? Do I go 1 and then go 3? Do I just go straight to level 3? I know we have a screenshot kind of that homepage where you can see the multiple assessments, if we can pull that up. But Bill and Chip, I would turn it over to you. Chip, let's start with you and talk about, what do you recommend? What guidance would you give for somebody who's going 1 or 3, or maybe even 5?
Well, so as I mentioned before, 5 is, those are going to be some really intricate, complex requirements. You know, we're talking about weapon systems being built. So, you know, 5 is probably, and again, there are no hard and fast rules on this. As Bill mentioned earlier, you know, point everyone towards the regulations and the requirement itself to determine what they need. But I think that a safe bet for getting into the game at this initial phase, you know, level 1 is the right level of attainment for a small business. For those small businesses, small to medium businesses, they should be looking at level 3. Resource-wise, that probably fits quite well as well. But I want to go back to something that was asked earlier, and Bill mentioned it, but I want to really re-emphasize this. You know, we have to look at the buying cycle for the federal government, in particular for DOD. And I think most folks will attest to that, when DOD is doing the majority of their buying, it's being done in, you know, federal Q3 and Q4. And so we're talking about, you know, the April to September timeframe, things are really kicking off hard. And so if you're looking to be certified, now is, and again, I want to reemphasize what Bill said, now is the time. If you wait until the last minute, it's going to get really difficult. And again, you're going to have too many competing requirements. You're going to have, you know, requirements to maintain your businesses. You're going to have requirements, you know, maintain your personnel, do all those things, and to go out and find new business. And now you've got this one more thing that you're trying to do late in the fiscal year when things are really getting hot and heavy. So earlier is better. Really can't emphasize that enough. Hey, Brian, so one of the other things is we had several questions on
Okay, I'll take it while he's up. So Brian, I'm going to go down the list of some of the questions here that I wanted to answer. Okay, like I see a question from John based on the description of audits, et cetera. It sounds like CMMC is a formal compliance process, like some of the ISO quality processes. And the answer is that's exactly right. This is very much a formal compliance process. And his question continues, so is there a staffing requirement? So there's not a specific staffing requirement laid out in CMMC. I think with assistance, the idea of doing this pre-assessment is to try to help you do it with your current IT staff. As you mentioned earlier, some folks, after they've done the pre-assessment, will realize that maybe they have more work to do than they originally thought. And so they then might hire a consultant to help them get that work done. But the first thing you need to do, if you think you're going to be required to be CMMC certified, is do that quick pre-assessment and figure out where you stand and help you develop your strategy for how you're going to get your company certified. And as has been pointed out, just previously, don't wait too long. Someone made the comment about, hey, sometimes RFPs only have a couple of weeks to turn around, and that answer is yes. So if you wait until the RFP comes out and goes, oh, gee, I think now I need a different CMMC certification, you're probably not going to get it done and sign up for an audit and pass the audit in time. This is part of a strategic planning process. It's part of a risk mitigation process to your DoD contracts and your DoD revenue stream. And so that's why we put this tool together. We think there's a real need to help companies understand what they're facing and put their strategic plan together for how and when they're going to get certified.
No, that's good, Bill. And I think it's, interesting on the timing thing is as these auditors come out, it's kind of like going to the doctor. You always want the first appointment in the morning. Otherwise, what happens? You're supposed to be there at 9, but it gets pushed out. And so by being ready, you're going to have less of that delay. So that's good. So let's kind of go back. A couple other things I'm seeing here, questions. Several still questions about just kind of, do I need to get certified or not? I'm this type of business. Again, I'll just repeat it, that it all boils down to, if you handle CUI, that's kind of that guiding principle, that litmus test that Bill was referring to earlier. Chip, quick question from Mo. Are there small business exceptions to CMMC?
No, and actually, Andy also asked a question along that same line. Andy actually asked several questions along that same line. The only real exception is, as Bill pointed out earlier, if you're not handling any CUI and you're providing COTS, COTS equipment to the federal government, to the DoD, then you may not be covered. But even that, you've got to be careful about that and really look at what's in the requirement itself. And the requirement itself may actually have, that all both prime and sub require that.
Yeah.
And along that same line, and real quick, along that same lines, Andy had asked a question about, are there any specific NAICS that are covered by the Pathfinder RFPs, or if the Pathfinder RFPs are at the DoD or the entire federal level? The answer is no. There's not been any specific identified NAICS that are exclusively for the Pathfinder RFPs, but now the Pathfinder RFPs do only fall under DoD at this time. But eventually, there's a real potential. You can go back; it's plenty of open source material. There's a real potential that this could go federal wide. So again, get an early start on the process is to your benefit. Whereas waiting, as I think we've said a couple of times on this call, waiting does put you at a disadvantage. And the final part to Andy's question was, does it look any different in the RFP? It looks just like the regular reps and certs that are part of the requirement. And so again, it is a requirement. It's going to be included, just like many of the requirements are included in all RFPs. And so there's really no, secret sauce to this. Requirement is there. The earlier you get yourself ready for the requirement, the better off you are.
And Chip, in the beginning, when you were part of that answer, you were talking, I think initially, is there an exception for small businesses? And we talked before about what level is right for different size businesses. The size of business you are does not correlate to the level of CMMC certification that you need. It's all about what type of work are you doing. There are some very small companies that are doing very sophisticated work. And so That's why you shouldn't correlate the size of your company to the CMMC certification level it's going to be required. You need to review your RFPs. You need to talk to your government contracting officials, and that'll give you the answer. You know, there's another good question from John. Said, is there a CMMC template or checklist we can use to start getting certified that would be helpful? Well, here's the answer, John. So they've listed, they've published, you know, all of the CMMC certification questions in the regulation, and they've listed which ones. If you look on the DoD website, they'll tell you which ones apply to which certification level. But the reason we've developed this pre-assessment solution is that that's left a lot of companies in the defense industrial base wondering, what do they really mean by that? Does this apply to me? What are the implications? So we go into using this solution, we go into a lot more explanation using our government compliance experts. Hey, what does that question really mean to me? And that's the whole point of doing this. And so that's why we keep saying a really good way for you to start is to do a pre-assessment and to use our solution to guide you through that pre-assessment. And that there is, it'll help you develop your POAM, right, for getting ready. But in response to yet another question, you either get certified at 100% or you don't. There is no conditional certification based on a POAM that you develop like some other certifications. It's go, no go. And so the POAM that we're talking about is internal to your company to help you get ready to get that 100% when it comes time for your audit.
Oh, that's good. So, you know, I think one of the things that we're question here that I just want to go back to real quick. Somebody had asked, what is CUI? Bill?
Sorry, I was reading a bunch of the questions here.
Sorry. The question is what is CUI?
So control and classified information. I don't have the DoD definition at the here at my fingertips. So thanks for asking the question. But if you go to the CMMC website that DoD has set up, they have all the definitive answers for these questions. So I encourage you to go straight to the source, right? I encourage you to that'll answer a lot of your questions, but you'll also realize when you look at that, if you don't have a highly sophisticated IT compliance staff at your company that already is all over this, you're going to need some help. You're going to need some help interpreting it. You're going to need some help getting ready. You're going to need some help structuring and doing that assessment. So that's what we call this a pre-assessment, right? The actual assessment that you get is the audit. So I refer you to, and all you got to do is search, CMMC and look at the DoD website, not all the other ads, of folks who are telling you about CMMC. Look at the DoD website and get it straight from the authoritative source.
And one of the things, so just so everybody's, for all you attendees and all, we will send out an email, and we were going to have links to that source that Bill just mentioned. We will also send you a link to where you can learn more about the pre-assessment tool, and there's some additional information on that page about it. One of the questions I've seen a couple times, Bill, is what's the cost and what is the licensing for the tool?
Yeah, so first of all, our solution costs $4,000.
Solution, I owe you $1.
Yeah, okay. So that gives you, the way we're licensing that is you get a 1-year license to use it from the date that you make the purchase. You can run it multiple times. You can run it at multiple levels because we recognize the fact that you may not know exactly which CMMC certification level that you need, right? Some companies, this is another point I bring up, most companies don't have just a single DoD contract that they're pursuing. Most companies are pursuing multiple RFPs, multiple contract awards, and those might be of varying levels. If you have a CMMC level 4 certification and it only requires level 3, you're good to go. You don't need to separately get it, so you're good for any CMMC requirements that are below the level that you're certified for. What you don't want to do is be surprised that one comes out higher, because there is, it's not something that happens overnight for you to say, oh, I want to bump up a level, because that'll require you to schedule another audit. That'll require you to meet, other requirements. So that explains it. And the one thing I guess I did want to point out that in our solution, in addition to walking you through all of the CMMC specific questions, QOMPLX also offers what we call our Q scan. It's an open source intelligence OSINT scan of the company that registers for the CMMC, and we do an open source scan just like we do for many of our other customers that aren't CMMC related. And essentially it gives you a breakdown of your basic cyber hygiene. We look for all sorts of typical exploits, ransomware indications of compromise that you would want to know about. This is not directly related to your CMMC audit, but because it addresses things related to basic cyber hygiene and notifications, it will impact your ability to get CMMC certified. So that's why we've added it. It's kind of a bonus that you get in addition to it. So if you look at the video or some other promotional materials and you see the OSINT scan score or the scan based on open source intelligence, that's what we're talking about.
We have that screenshot, correct?
Yeah.
Michelle, will you go to that, please? So
there you go.
Yeah.
And it's important to read this. It says the cyber scan scoring results based on open source intelligence. So this is not where you're going to get evaluated on your CMMC answers. This is that bonus piece at the end that gives you a cyber scan score based on what we can pick up with all our sophisticated means of tracking what's going on in various places on the internet and looking for indications of compromise.
Yeah. So Bill, I know we talked about a lot about the solution itself. So you can license it one time and do as many iterations as you want. You can, if you want to start at 1 and get 1 and you go, hey, let's go up to 3, you can do 3. And I know each of the questions are based on the requirements that CMMC has set forth. So there's one question, for every requirement, there's a question in the solution.
And if you say I want level 3, it only shows you the questions required for level 3.
Correct. Yeah. And that's great. And then, ultimately the other question we get a lot is okay, now that I've completed that assessment and I'm ready for my audit, what am I going to get out of, how does the solution ultimately help me get ready for that? And I know this is two things that I think that I don't think we've covered yet today is number one, with those questions and requirements, how do I answer that? And is there help for me on that? And then secondly, once I am finished with it and I'm ready to meet with that auditor, what's the output that comes from the solution and what does that look like? And I know we got a screenshot of the cover for the report. So.
Yeah, and that's literally just to show you that you do get a formal report at the end, and it lists all the questions in order. It lists your responses to the questions, and it lists your supporting documents that you attach to the response to that questions. So literally, if you've done this, when the auditor shows up, you're going to be able to hand him this package or electronically, hand him the package, and it shows that you've already answered the question to what you believe is the right level. We think this will expedite and simplify the process of getting your audit because you've already answered the questions that the auditor is required to ask you, and you've given them evidence to support your answer. So that doesn't mean that the auditor is absolutely going to accept your answer. They still have to independently verify that they think your answer is sufficient and that you provided documentation to justify the answer. But it should, if I were an auditor and somebody handed me this and it says, okay, here's the questions I have to ask, here's the answer, here's the documentation, I would think that would significantly simplify and expedite the process. And that's what we're trying to do.
Great. I appreciate that. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left. So, we have a poll question. We'd like to get some feedback on how helpful this webinar was for us. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Michelle to pop that up for us. A couple other quick questions here that I see that I'll just go through real quick here. The pre-assessment, it is $4,000 per year. It is an annual license. It does allow you to, it's for level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you can use it for any of those. Bill, I think there's one question here, and then we're going to kind of move to final thoughts, and I'll kind of turn it over to your final thoughts. And if there's any question that I missed that you guys really wanted to answer, but my final question to you two is going to be, Bill, is there, if there is truly an estimated 300,000 DoD vendors, approximately 5,700 vendors a week need to be certified to everyone, does that seem realistic? And
well, that's the one that I tried to answer before when I said DoD said they're going to take 5 years to roll out. Okay. So that does make it more realistic. They're also ramping up the number of certified auditors and the number of certified assessment or organizations. So there's this upward trending scale of the number of auditors and companies that are training those auditors. But there's also going to be an upward trending scale of the number of RFPs that require CMMC certification. So that's why we're saying, don't wait. Do your pre-assessment now. Understand where your company is in the process. You talked about the price, $4,000. We think that's actually below the noise level when you look at what a company might have to do. When you get your pre-assessment, you might realize you have to change some of your IT security practices. When you look at the contract values of defense contracts, they're often significantly greater than that amount. So when the cost of complying with CMMC has been designated an allowable cost in your RFP responses, in your pricing volume. So DoD has declared that an allowable cost. So you should take that into account. We think it's money well spent. And to be honest, when you look at the dollar value of typical DoD contracts and the OT compliant, IT compliance costs, we think it's fairly negligible compared to those.
Okay, great. So listen, everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to start with you, Bill, for closing thoughts.
Yeah, we received an awful lot of questions, many of which we weren't able to get to. I'm still looking at 36 open questions. At the end, we're going to have some contact information for questions related to the pre-assessment solution itself. I recommend you direct those to QOMPLX, but D&B is also a good source of answers for those. For questions about the purchasing process, I would direct those more towards Dun Bradstreet. But either of the partners can answer questions, and we coordinate with each other if for some reason we think the other partner is more qualified to answer the question. So reach out to us. We're happy to interact with you. We're coming out with more demonstration tools to help folks understand what it is. The bottom line is this is a fairly small thing that we think helps you solve a big problem. It's understanding where you are in the process, understanding if you have little tiny changes to make or big changes to make, how much are those going to cost you, how long are they going to take. The first step is knowing where you stand. So we really recommend you start the pre-assessment soon. We stand ready to help you, and we look forward to working with all of you.
Great, thanks, Bill. Chip.
Again, so I want to thank everybody for joining us today. A lot of great questions. As Bill said, the questions still keep coming in. We have contact information for you, so we'll provide as many answers as we possibly can. We absolutely look forward to talking to each and every one of you and helping you make the decision as to how you want to start this journey. You're part of the, if you're on this call, then more than likely you are part of, what is commonly referred to as the defense industrial base. This requirement is here. This requirement is not going to go away. It's not going to get scaled down. It just simply won't happen because it can't happen. the need is too great. We've seen too many times in the news, even recently, where cybersecurity has come front and center. And this is one step, one major step towards making sure that the industrial base is secure. And so the requirement is going to stay there. DoD has put a lot of time and effort into developing this requirement, and so they've got a vested interest in making it work. So now you've got to make a decision as to whether or not you want to make it work. And I think the answer is pretty simple. It's yes. And so how do you do that? You do it by getting after it. You get after it with a tool that can help you quickly set yourself on the path to success, make you procurement ready, make you attractive for the small businesses of the world. It makes you not only attractive to the contracting officers of the world that ensure that the requirement is met, but it also makes you attractive to those medium and small business partners that want to work with you, but also want to know that your cyber hygiene is where it needs to be. So again, take a look at it, look at the procurement cycle, look at the time required, look at the resources required, and get yourself, if it's not our tool, get yourself the right tools to do this, because again, we want all businesses to be successful, and this is one way to support that. So again, thanks for everybody's time and the opportunity to talk to you today.
Great. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Bill. Thank you to all the attendees and those of you that are still with us. Really appreciate you being here and making this a very engaging session. Like I said, we'll send out a follow-up email. We will have a link to the DoD website. There will be a link to where you can find out more about the pre-assessment solution itself and a replay for this webinar as well. With that, you all have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bill, Chip, thanks again. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.